Hey folks, I'm going to show you how to make the basic version of the Diddley Bow. I don't want to show you really how to go beyond the basic version because I want you to embellish and iterate on your own. So this is going to be kind of the nitty-gritty of it, and then I hope that you take this and build off of it. So first things, let's go over the materials. We are going to need a drill. We're going to need a can or some kind of container for our resonator that the sound will actually travel out of. Some drill bits. A full set is great. We're only probably going to use 3 of these, but it's good to have all of them. 2 wood screws for attaching your can to your piece of wood. A big bolt or maybe even a piece of wood would work. Basically something to use as a nut that the string will sit on up at the top of the instrument. A screwdriver and some specialty things that you may have to go purchase, but you could also make do with some kind of makeshift DIY versions at home. So this is a guitar string purchased at a music store, but you could do this with some fishing line. You could try it with some regular wire for electronics projects and things like that. And then we also have a machine head, and this machine head is, a specialty item for musical instruments. If you don't have that, you could use S-hooks or I-hooks like this to kind of hold your string in place up towards the top of the neck of your instrument. So you can make do if you don't have these things. I am going to use this today and show you how to do one of these diddley bows with a machine head and with an actual guitar string. However, I don't have these screws to my machine head, so I'm going to kind of wing it, and I'm going to use a couple of tiny little hooks that at least fit through those holes. So when I get to that stage, that's how I'll mount those. Normally I would have some nice kind of flat screws, just like these wood screws, but smaller. Then we're going to need probably a couple clamps. You'll probably do this without clamps, but you might want some. And then the neck of your instrument. It doesn't have to be flat. I don't know if you can see the bow in this, but there's some bow in this piece. It doesn't matter, there are some knots. This is going to be a slide instrument, so having a nice flat level neck doesn't really matter. The length of this neck doesn't really matter. You can use whatever piece of scrap you have around. So that's all we're going to need, and now let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is clear my workspace. I'm going to work with my resonator, my can here first, and I'm going to need my largest bit. So in this case I'm using a 1/4 inch bit. This is going to drill a couple of large holes on one side of the can. You don't have to measure precisely here. These are going to be your sound holes, so it doesn't have to be exact. But I'm going to put one hole about here and one hole about right here. And I'm going to need to clamp this down. Okay, so I'm going to clamp that down. I'm going to load this up into my drill. Again, drill safety. We should always have this drill on safety with the trigger in the middle before putting anything in or out of the chuck. But now we're good, so let's reverse. I can drill my 2 holes on safety. So those holes were not perfect, but again, this doesn't really matter. This is a couple of sound holes that sound can travel out of and resonate through, as well as the bottom of the can, of course. But this is also going to be important because this will allow us to get our screwdriver through to get to our screws on the other side when we use our wood screws to actually screw this down to our neck. So now I'm ready to flip my can over, which I've already done. The 2 holes that I just drilled are directly below this line, basically. So I'm looking to drill 2 smaller holes, roughly opposite, or as perfectly opposite, if I can, get it from these 2 holes. And again, that's going to allow us to get our screwdriver through the larger holes we just drilled so that we can get these wood screws in. I've got all my bits right here because I need to pick the perfect bit for the size of the wood screw. These are number 6 3/4 inch long wood screws, so the 3/32 might be just a little bit too big. I want to basically drill pilot holes with this, so that all I have to do is screw this through the wood and the can pretty easily. So I guess I'm gonna go ahead and try a 3/32 bit. And let's see how this works. Okay, so again, those are lined up pretty well, which is going to be good because they'll sit straight on my neck when I screw it down. Not perfectly lined up with the holes on the other side, but that's okay. This will work just fine. So I have now 4 holes, 2 large holes here, and the 2 small holes that I just drilled directly opposite, or as best as I could get it without measuring. Now I'm going to drill 1 more hole. I am going to make sure my drill is on safety. I'm going to drill a tiny hole. This will serve as the bridge for my string when the string goes through the can. So what I'm going to do is flip this around so that, again, the sound holes are on top, these holes are on bottom, so that when my string comes through here, this area serves as the bridge. The string travels up the neck to the nut and the machine head that we have here, and that's what keeps the tension. So it can't be too low and it can't be too high, or it won't play very well. So I'm going to estimate about 1 inch, 3/4 of an inch maybe, right about here, and again try to line it up with my 2 small holes. And then I'm going to hold the can down here, far away from the bit. It's a short enough bit. I'm confident that I'm not going to drill my hand. So I'm making sure that hopefully this is lined up with those 2 tiny holes. I'm going to drill straight down. Alright, I'll say these 1/16 of an inch bits are very fragile, so be careful if you're using one of these teeny bits. And you probably will need to use one of these bits. This is a more of a bass string for a guitar. I can't remember exactly which note, but it is going to hopefully fit through that hole. I might have to widen it up, but this should be good. Now we are going to move on to attaching this to our neck, and then we've only got a few more holes to drill and we're all done. So we're going to take our neck. I have my neck right here, again just an old piece of scrap wood. I'm going to look for the best place to mount it. It doesn't really matter, but I'm going to choose this end. So what I'm going to do is set my can down here. Depending on the size of your can, you might be able to do this with a pencil going all the way through and just kind of marking through that small hole. You might be able to get your hand in there with a little golf pencil, or in this case I'm going to try to use the bit to mark my wood. But I'm going to go through and find those small holes, get this bit or marker or pencil or whatever through, and mark where I need to drill a couple of little holes for this can to be mounted. So I'm marking one now. This is a large enough can that I can get my hand in. If it's not, I would need a different strategy. Okay. 2 holes marked enough for me, and then I'm going to just kind of finish that up so I can see it even better. So, give you the extreme close-up. Alright, so I have that ready to go. I'm going to clamp this down for good measure. I'm not going to drill all the way through these 2 holes that I made. I'm just going to make a couple of pilot holes, and I'm going to go back to that 3/32 bit that we kind of sized up with our wood screws earlier. Alright, so there's my 3/32 bit. I'm just going to take this and drill a couple of little pilot holes. Not all the way through the wood. Just maybe half the depth of the piece, but we're basically making sure that we have enough of a small enough hole that these screws have something to grab onto. So this is good, it's not too loose. I'll actually have to screw these in to make sure they're tight. and that's what we want. Next step, I'm going to take my can and I'm going to put it here. I can kind of get my clamp out of the way for this. And then this is the tricky part. Be patient, take your time. It's frustrating sometimes, but you can do it. So I find my holes inside my can here, and I can poke my screws through, hopefully. Again, it's pretty tight, so I am going to have to even screw that through the metal, which is good. But I can at least get it started. Like so. And hopefully I'm lined up with my pilot hole. It feels like I am. So I continue to screw this in. And I'm done with that one. Next screw. So really, this is probably enough. We're not going to have so much tension on this instrument, but to keep it from going back and forth like that, I will put my second screw in as well. So now we have a mounted can on the neck of my instrument. So my resonator and my neck are both attached, and we're getting closer. Okay, now we're ready to take our machine head and get it mounted, and as soon as we've got this mounted, we can run our string through, string up our diddly bow, and jam out. So first step is we have to figure out where to mount our machine head. Obviously we have to be able to turn the machine head to tune the instrument, to tighten the string or loosen the string. So if I put it in the middle like this, I don't have clearance for my knob. However, if I put it like this, in this case, it'll still be in the middle, making a nice straight line all the way up to the machine head, but it'll allow me to turn it. It's kind of unconventional, but I think it'll be fine for the placement of this piece. So I'm going to flip this over. This is going to be, it's fine to drill this way, kind of from the back side actually, because this is where we're actually going to mount our piece from this side, because the machine head piece needs to go through to the front side of the neck where we can connect the string. So we're actually going to put our screws for these tiny holes on this side, so this will kind of help us see where that's going to go to. First, I've already changed my bit to a 1/4 inch bit, that largest bit, and I am going to just kind of eyeball this for the time being. Again, it doesn't have to be precise. I do want it right down the middle of the wood, or the middle of my neck, so that the string doesn't come at a weird angle. It just makes the instrument harder to play, harder to tune. So that is pretty straight, and I'm going to place my bit there. If you're, if this makes you nervous and you really want to measure it out, that is totally fine. I suggest you go for it. I'm just going kind of, again, nitty gritty here to show you guys how it's done, and in this case, not measuring. Remember, this hole you do want to go all the way through, and that will allow me to place my machine head through like this. Now all I have to do, I can leave it exactly like this. This wood's pretty soft, it's just some plywood. I might be able to do this by hand. I might need to drill a little pilot hole. It looks like I will. So I'm going to take my handy dandy 1/16. I'm going to just kind of mark this again so that I know where my pilot hole is going. Same right here. I can remove this, remove the machine head, change my bit, Going with that super small 1/16 of an inch bit again, because we have these really small threads on the screws. Alright, so my machine head is ready to be mounted. Again, it's got to go that way so that it can actually be mounted there. I have, looks like I'm a little off on one of those holes, so I might have to re-drill. That's alright. Alright, that's enough of a start though, so I can take my one hook. Again, normally I would be using these teeny tiny wood screws, but I cannot seem to find any. So improvise. In this case, I'm going to go right through this hole because it's small enough. Should be able to. That's better. So now I need to test it out, but I have a working machine head and I can spin and I see that it's turning. So, last step, here we go. There we have a completed diddley bow. Essentially we have one more step, and that is to string it up and play it. So we've got our resonator, we've got our tuner, our machine head up here. We are going to take our string and unwind it. It's going to go through, if it's the ball end string like this, it's nice, it should fit easily and not pop through the can. If you have a looped string or you're using some kind of home DIY method, you might want to stick kind of a nail or screw through the end of the string and something to keep it in there. When there's tension on this string, it will definitely want to pull out of the can unless there's something holding it in place. So now that ball end has it secured. I'm going to take this through the end of my machine head all the way through the hole. If you've ever played a stringed instrument, this should be old hat to you. Stringing an instrument should be no problem. If you haven't strung an instrument before, it can be a little strange, but basically I'm going to pull it as tight as I possibly can. I'm going to kind of kink it down in one direction, whichever direction you feel more comfortable. And then I'm going to go through underneath between the neck and the string, and I am going to bend it back over itself. Then when I start turning, one way will tighten, one way will loosen, so you have to figure that out depending on how you mounted your machine head. Okay, so I am raising the pitch right now. And that happens sometimes where it comes unkinked. I think that's probably good enough. So I have my nut, final piece. When I would clip this off, I'm going to leave it there for a second, just in case I need some final adjustments of the string. I would take my nut and put it somewhere up here where it sits nice and snug. This is a nice bolt, so the string sits nicely in one of its threads, and it's a relatively straight neck, so it looks like it's going to play pretty well. So there's your diddley bow. You've got a nut, you've got a bridge, you've got your working string and your neck, and you can play a slide guitar. You could even try to play it like this if you wanted to, and fret it, This is going to be a little bit harder because it's not meant to be a fretted instrument. It's meant to be played like a slide, so the action is really high. But you can still do it. Jam out. Have a good time. And thanks for making it with me. Hope you had fun.